Hi guys, it's said that Brexit eats its own children, and that's certainly the case in Northern Ireland. But the rift going on within the extremes of unionism perhaps runs deeper than Brexit. The DUP, which itself is an extreme party, has been engaging in a love-hate relationship with a more extreme element in Northern Ireland, the TUV, the traditional unionist voice. Its leader, Jim Allister, who has just one seat in the Northern Ireland Assembly, has managed to force the DUP to adopt its approach to politics. A bit like Reform UK in England, the TUV have managed to drive the bigger party to its way of thinking. While on the surface the motivation to keep the executive closed is the Northern Ireland Protocol and Windsor Framework, the real reason is the idea of a Sinn Féin First Minister. So while the DUP is split over a continued boycott, the TUV is declaring open war on the former. Have a listen.
Who put the posters up? Was this the TUV?
There certainly were members of TUV involved, but let's get the context of this. For weeks and months, we've had the political elite and political commentators studiously ignoring grassroots concerns, telling us the shape of the deal, which essentially is that the protocol stays. I don't think it's any surprise that there should be a grassroots kickback against that.
Is that what this is, a grassroots kickback? Is that what the intention was?
I think so, because there is a fear amongst unionism of a sellout. Now, what would a sellout look like from a unionist perspective? Let me break it down. It would contain these components: that the union dismantling protocol stays, that the sea border stays, that EU law stays, and that Article 6 of the Acts of Union stays suspended. Now, if that is the deal, no matter how it's dressed up, if those are the essential abiding components of it, then to many unionists that would be a sellout. And I think these posters were a message to the DUP, and indeed the DUP can turn them to their advantage. It gives them extra leverage with the government to show the pressure that there is to get a durable deal.
What do you feel the DUP has sold out?
Well, I'm not saying they have sold out. I'm saying that if they were to sell out, it would look like the protocol stays, EU law stays, the border stays, and Article 6 stays suspended. Now, if their deal when stripped down amounts to that, then that would be a sellout. And this is a warning across the shots of the DUP, I suppose, to don't go there.
This is all an internal fight within unionism. So this stems from Brexit. So you had the DUP and you had more extreme elements in unionism in Northern Ireland who wanted the UK to leave the European Union. They thought what would happen is when the UK left, there would be a hard border on the island of Ireland. This was their dream. They were against the Good Friday Agreement, which removed infrastructure on the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And what they wanted it reinforced. They wanted a hard border. That's what their goal was. Now, many of them were against the Good Friday Agreement, and they didn't realise that the UK government would have to respect the Good Friday Agreement. So an alternative would have to be found. Fast forward to 2022, when elements within the DUP were talking about the chance of a Sinn Féin First Minister. Sinn Féin growing in support, there was a chance that they could become the biggest party and Sinn Féin would be able to select a First Minister. This was detrimental to unionism. They understood this is going to be the end of unionism because it shows that Sinn Féin are now the biggest party. Now, Sinn Féin had held the seat before, but this was a wake-up call for unionism. So you had elements within the DUP and the TUV itself, the traditional unionist voice, who said, we don't want to go into government with Sinn Féin. We have to stop the executive. If we stop the executive, we save unionism. A very weird way of trying to deny reality, deny the way the wind is blowing. But they couldn't come out and say that. So what they had to do was find an alternative. And the alternative was the Northern Ireland Protocol. So elements within the DUP put pressure, along with the TUV, put pressure on the leadership within the DUP to refuse to go into government with Sinn Féin. Now, they couldn't come out and say, well, because Sinn Féin is the biggest party, that's anti-democratic. So they had to find an alternative, and that was the Northern Ireland Protocol. And since 2022, we're going into 2024 now. Since 2022, there hasn't been an executive in place, and the people of Northern Ireland are suffering. The NHS doesn't have access to the funds it needs. There are charities and organisations which rely on public money. They have closed their operations or downsized. Northern Ireland is becoming a basket case because the DUP are refusing to go into government with Sinn Féin. Why? Because the TUV are putting pressure on them. And it's very easy for Jim Allister to sit on the sidelines because he's never going to be in government. So he can say, this is a sellout. What you need to do is stand up to the government, demand that the sea border is removed, demand that Article 6 of the Act of Union, which has been dismissed by 2 courts already, is enforced, that EU law is not adopted in Northern Ireland, and that the protocol is thrown in the bin. Westminster overwhelmingly supports the Windsor Framework, the Northern Ireland Protocol, the withdrawal agreement. That's not going away. The DUP have no leverage here. The DUP have no influence over the Tories at the moment. Like, they have been boycotting since March or May 2022. So how can you expect them to have some sort of influence now? The Tories are on the ropes. They know that they're going to lose at the next general election. Labour are not entertaining the idea of selling out their principles to help the DUP. So the DUP have to go back in. Jeffrey Donaldson and others within the party understand, look, we need to get back into government. This is damaging the DUP and it's damaging the union, because the longer the executive doesn't work, is not operating, the more people in Northern Ireland will say, well, Northern Ireland is a failed state. It's not working. The likes of the TUV and hardliners within unionism, it's easy for them to sit on the sidelines and say, look, you need to do X, Y, and Z. But the main party, the DUP, the biggest unionist party, have to be seen to be defending the union. And this is detrimental. Brexit was a terrible idea. People back in 2016 were warning that it could damage the union. There were moderates within unionism who were warning against this, saying leaving the European Union will create disruption to the union. We should not go down this road. But the hardliners, as I've said on a number of occasions, their hatred of the EU and Ireland was stronger than any love for the union. And it still remains to be the case. It still remains the case, because the best way to resolve this would be for the UK to rejoin the single market. That's not going to happen anytime soon. But it would remove the border between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. But these people are not interested in that. They want their hard border on the island of Ireland. The Tories are not going to implement that, and the future Labour government are not going to implement that. But so this comes back to this dispute within unionism. A fight between the extremes within the DUP and the extremes within other sections of the unionist community, the TUV. And Jeffrey Donaldson is caught in between that. He's painted himself into this corner. Instead, back in 2022, he should have bit the bullet. He should have said, look, we have to go into government with Sinn Féin, and to hell with the consequences to the party, because this is damaging the union and damaging the DUP in the long term. There would have been some short-term damage to the DUP if they went into government with Sinn Féin. But they could have said, look, the problems that are happening at the moment, the cost of living and stuff like that, they could have blamed that on the Sinn Féin administration, the conflict within the DUP and the Sinn Féin administration. But now they can blame no one but themselves. And this is actually helping Sinn Féin and helping supporters of a united Ireland. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.